Corona, how long is the exhibition going on till the current one?
So the exhibition's going to go on till we're discussing it this week, so I can't say.
Oh, right. Okay. But for a bit longer, basically. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Nice to make sure I come and see.
So I'm just going to admit the first tranche of people and see what happens.
Okay.
Okay.
So hello everybody. I'm trying to figure out a way of making video participants only visible on the screen, and I am failing miserably. Hello, everybody. We're just trying to figure out how we can make it so that non-video participants are not visible. And I think Evelyn, as the host, might be able to figure something out, just so that we have our panelists front and center.
I'm trying to work something out now.
If anybody has any ideas.
Yeah, we should all know how to use this by now, but
I know. I always yes, I'm convinced there's a way of hiding non-video participants, which I have not found yet. But I am sure that
if everyone who is not a panelist turns their video off, and then everyone puts their own Zoom on speaker view, then it should be that you see who is talking.
Yes, if you put it on speaker view, I think that's the best. I think that's the best possible outcome. So, Evelyn, have we still got some people in the waiting room, or should I start?
No, we can start.
Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome and good evening to everyone who's joining us today. I'm really pleased that we could do this Arts After Dark event with Gloria in the middle of lockdown 2. We were wondering, what sort of thing would be useful to some of you out there, and what you'd like, what you might be curious about. As you know, Cambridge doesn't have a fine art degree. It does have a very small history of art cohort, but many students who come to Cambridge do go on to do lots of wonderful things in the arts. And we didn't have to look further than 3 of our own students, to find people who've made their own kind of innovative journeys into the arts. I mean, they're all talented, ambitious, and extremely creative. So I'm very happy to see them all. And as an aside, I can also, I have special pleasure in that all of them have worked at the Heong Gallery during their time at Downing. So I'm going to hand over to Evelyn and Maria, who are the conveners of Gloria. You'll find out a little bit more about Gloria from its founder, who's one of our panelists today as well. And if you could keep your videos off, perhaps that will help in being able to see the person who's talking a bit better. Great, so I'm going to hand over to Evelyn.
Thanks, Karina. So I'll just introduce the event and Gloria a little bit first. So this is the second panel event that Gloria has hosted with the Heong Gallery around creativity in Cambridge. The first one was during the first lockdown. This one is during the second lockdown. And these events we're holding alongside a series of exhibitions that are at the gallery commemorating the 40th anniversary of women's admission into Downing College. So the first one was We Are Here, which was an exhibition showcasing the work of female artists and artworks of women in college collections in Cambridge. And the second one, which is currently closed but will reopen when lockdown ends, is an exhibition by Quentin Blake, which imagines 40 Downing students in commemoration of the 40th anniversary. So we just wanted to create a second panel to discuss the problems and also exciting creative spaces in Cambridge that exist alongside and outside of the university. And Gloria is one of them. We're a society that holds events alongside the Heong Gallery, and we've ran film screenings and performances and talks in the past. And we're excited to be able to do this online for everyone now. So I guess I'll just kick off and introduce the participants that we have today. So first we have Eleanor, who is a communications and programme officer at Shape Arts, a disability-led organisation working to remove barriers to creative excellence. Eleanor also works on the communications team at Unlimited, the world's largest commissioning programme for disabled artists, co-led by Shape Arts and Arts Admin. She is committed to principles of accessibility, intersectionality and equity as cornerstones of a viable cultural landscape. Eleanor has previously worked in commercial and public arts environments, including the Wellcome Collection, Museum of London, Bold Tendencies, and Sotheby's Institute of Art. And our second panelist is Hannah, who is a recent graduate from Camberwell with an MA in printmaking. Her practice explores inherited memory, displayed through poetic storytelling, collections of moments remembered and reimagined in a connected series of drawings, etchings, and writings. She studied English literature at Downing College, founded Gloria at the Heong Gallery in her second year of study. Gloria came into being with the intention to encourage creative engagement with exhibitions through a variety of different events. Hannah also works for Marina Warner on the project Stories in Transit, which helps to organise story-making workshops both in Sicily and the UK. And our third panellist is Abs, who is a documentary photographer, artist, and proud miller at Brixton Windmill. They have collaborated on installations and long-term socially engaged projects with communities in London and Japan. They are currently finishing a BA in Fine Art at Wimbledon College of Art and have been awarded the Getty Images Inclusion Scholarship for 2020. So, yeah, I'm going to hand over to Maria to get the conversation going.
Thank you for that introduction. Like hearing you read through everyone's bios just like makes me feel so excited, and I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion. So the first question we wanted to ask each of you is just to kind of describe your creative practice and career, and I suppose what do you I think some of those things I suppose are things that you've done in the past and so on. How are you finding like your creative practice evolving, I suppose, in lockdown, and just I suppose what are your current projects like?
Does anyone? Abs, do you want to go or? Or Ella?
Yeah,
Ellie?
I can go.
Abs, yeah, you go.
Excuse the noise, by the way. I'm in the studio, so people might be like walking around. So yeah, I feel like you asked like 4 questions in that one question, so I'll try and remember. In terms of my practice and what I do, a lot of it is socially engaged work. Sometimes it's photography, sometimes it's ceramics, sometimes it's kind of archive work, which it's fun just to kind of pop around stuff. But most of what I do is if not photography, then documenting that process. I've been really fortunate to work with some really great artists and collectives and arts organizations. And what I put in that bio in terms of stuff I've done in Japan is with Grisdale Arts. So I've been part of this project, which is a 10-year project, and it's called Dreams of Kawanesato, and it's a rural community in Shimonoseki prefecture. And basically it all kind of started with the villagers wanting to bring people into the area, younger people, and just kind of share the skills that they had in terms of like the rural and specifically architecture as well. So we worked with 2 beekeepers in the village to build a beehive that also kind of doubled up as a social space or a community space. And then the idea is around that we're going to develop a beekeeping school that will hopefully be international and will bring people into the village. So it is a very, very long-term project. We built the beehive last summer, and the idea is that each year we'd be going back to do another element while the village keep working on it in the meantime. So obviously COVID has meant I haven't been able to go out there this year, but fingers crossed I'll be there in the spring, which is really exciting. And yeah, in terms of COVID in general and how it's affected things, everything kind of ground to a halt in April, work-wise in terms of projects I had going on. But what's been really exciting is that, so with Grisdale as well, we've started working on, it's almost like a make-at-home project. So we're trying to create kits that are based around ceramics making, using materials that you can find in your local hardware shop that will get people making stuff from home. And we're starting off with community groups in St Austell, and then hopefully spreading it even further than that. So that's something that's kept me going creatively, which has been nice. And also the windmill in Brixton, we mill flour, which is really cool to say that I do. And everyone's gone baking mad, so I've literally been in there every week with our volunteers, and yeah, it's been really good.
Cool. Shall I go next?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Ellie and I work at Shape Arts. I've been working at Shape Arts since January. I graduated from Downing last June. And so Shape Arts is a socially engaged kind of arts organisation and charity. And the work we do through kind of our Arts Council funding, we have heritage projects, I'll say that in a minute, but the work we do with the Arts Council funding through our main programme is mostly kind of finding opportunities and support and platforms for disabled artists, as well as trying to kind of start a conversation about disability and the disabled community and the value of disabled people to the cultural landscape. So our programme normally kind of we do like an annual exhibition, which is normally an open exhibition. So that's one of the biggest parts of our year. And then we have a really big prize that one disabled artist wins every year. And then we have kind of a shortlist exhibition of that as well. Obviously, a lot of that's been changed. So we've been doing so much digital work basically for the last however many months, 9 months. And we did our Shape Open this year, which was called The Future is Loading, online as a digital exhibition, which was really interesting actually, because obviously for disabled people, like this year has been really challenging for obvious reasons, but it's also been kind of an opportunity for non-disabled people to kind of wake up a bit and realize what other people are going through what people were going through before 2020, what people will go through after 2020 is over. So it's been a very kind of contradictory year for our community, and that has presented a lot of interesting points of collaboration and opportunity. And it's interesting to see how that's now kind of being influencing policy and stuff like that at Arts Council. But yeah, so we did this exhibition online, and it was the first kind of proper show that I'd curated, which was really exciting. And we got 25 marginalised artists, so disabled and non-disabled, but all marginalised in some way. We kind of worked to the social model of disability, which, if you're not familiar with it, basically states that people aren't disabled by an impairment or a health condition, but they're disabled by structures in society. And so my understanding and the kind of understanding that we build into our program is that's quite an intersectional concept. And so we gathered these 25 marginalised artists and we kind of worked with them to pull out work from their archive. We didn't suggest anyone had to make new work because I thought that was a bit peak in the middle of lockdown, but obviously everyone was paid regardless. So it was really good, and it ended up going on tour virtually to China, and it's going to Brazil and Japan as well. So it's been really exciting, and we're doing kind of, I think the further the year has gone on, the more technology has kind of adapted to the needs of the disabled arts community, and so we've in the works at the minute with an augmented reality exhibition for the new year with 4 disabled artists kind of literally breaking the fourth wall and being able to leave their house that they haven't all year. Some of our artists have literally not left their house all year. So it's really exciting time, but also incredibly stressful. And yeah, I also work on Unlimited, which we run through Shape Arts and Arts Admin, which is a massive commissioning program for disabled artists internationally. So that's also been really exciting. We've just kind of closed our latest commissioning round. So exciting things coming out of there as well.
Great. It's really exciting hearing what you've both been able to do over in your separate kind of practices and works. It's great. I finished my MA in printmaking in July, so at kind of strange time, not really being in the workshop, so making a lot from home, obviously. And I guess quite a lot of my art practice comes from words and stories that have been told by family members, especially my grandmother, kind of anecdotes that I've heard her mention or just have kind of stuck in my memory, and then I kind of use them to create scenes and images. And that's kind of the last project I was working on, basically used, or I worked with those stories that I kind of then rewrote and then made into etchings and drawings. And that's kind of, actually that was a really important project for me because I think I worked out my process much more. And I think having a lot of time to be quite focused on writing and that process really helped me work out I want to make maybe books and more written or annotated kind of works. But I also work for Marina Warner, who's a writer, and she runs storytelling workshops, and mainly we've been working with a group in Palermo in Sicily called Giocarenda, and they make storytelling games, and they're a group of asylum seekers and refugees, and the games are brilliant, and they run their own workshops there, and they have a shop where they make them, and we've got works with people in the UK. So we've got our first online workshop on Saturday, which is quite exciting, but a bit scary. I'm helping kind of organise that, and that's with a group of participants from Compass Collective, who are a theatre collective based in the UK. So yeah, that's I guess my practice and work.
Yeah, like Hannah said, it's really amazing to hear people talk about their own practice as well as what opportunity. I mean, I don't know whether I want to like recover lockdown, which was a horrible time, as like a time of opportunity, but I think there's like creativity under constraints, which is hopeful, I guess. So I guess following on from that, actually, and sort of touching on the lockdown and creativity, it would just be interesting to hear, because everyone has different definitions, I think. It would be interesting to hear what creativity means to you all personally, or also socially as well, not necessarily personally. Why do you think creativity is important for you, or important in the world, or for certain communities or things like that?
I guess for me anyway, I see creativity and art as not completely distinct, obviously, but like fairly separate like concepts, because for me creativity is like inherently relational, and it's more abstract than like a piece of art or work of art or a project. It's like a way of thinking, and it's creative thinking. And I think what's most interesting to me, especially kind of like with the work I do and the work that I want to do, is that you do just find creativity, I wouldn't say blossoms, because that paints a prettier picture than I think I want to, but like when you're marginalized or you're put in positions where your agency is limited, you have to think creatively, and you have to rely on others. And something really interesting and exciting about the prospect of working in a creative space and working with people who kind of prioritize creativity, because it really symbolizes that kind of collectivity. And I really don't like individualism and things like that. So for me, it's like a whole like way of life, but also almost kind of just so commonplace that it feels bizarre to even try and abstract it. Because then I guess for me, like art comes further down the line of creativity. Like you could creatively think about like your shopping list, and I'm not sure anyone would call that art, but you know, it's even more exciting when creativity does become kind of like these really beautiful things and really meaningful things. But I think it's interesting watching how it pops up in kind of the more mundane and everyday spaces where it's just necessary, for me anyway.
It's like survival, kind of creative survival.
Yeah.
No, I think because I was thinking about that, think about creativity also in like, it can be in cooking and I don't know, and like mending clothes, or it can be in solving exactly. Or like coming to a maths equation. I think creativity it can include like a need to create, that's like you're given, you have to, there's kind of no other option. But it's also like but it kind of, it's also a way of communicating and creating something so that there's another way of saying something, so it's not just like with words or with language. It's like finding other means to tell a story or just communicate your story or a story, or imagine things as well. I think imagination is another word that could kind of come into play, but yeah, I don't know. It's imagination. I guess there's a lot of people that have different definitions of imagination as well. So I don't know. Yeah. Oh, is Abs muted? Is Abs muted?
Oh, Evelyn, does
Oh,
need you to unmute them?
there we
Here we
go.
go. All right. Yeah, I was just agreeing with you guys because I think for me, like, there's definitely just, I really appreciate creative thinking in situations where you don't associate creativity with it. So, like, I mean, over lockdown, we've all been stuck in our homes, and where I live at the moment is Dorchester Court. It's in Herne Hill, and it's a really, really beautiful space. It's like a 1930s Art Deco estate of 8 buildings, but we have a really terrible landlord who's basically trying to get planning permission to build on top of it and ruin loads of really beautiful architectural features. And what lockdown has kind of done is like forced us all together in a good way, because we've started organizing creatively as a community and trying to think about ways that we can, one, like protect people from being evicted in what is a crazy time anyway, and they, you know, just to protect families and people's homes, but then also just like looking after each other. There's been a lot all over the country. There've been mutual aid groups popping up and people thinking about different ways that they can, like, yeah, just check in on each other. And I think, yeah, not to be cheesy, but creatively thinking in those ways definitely has helped me and helped those people.
Yeah.
And it's those collaborative, the creativity of collaboration that I think then nurtures relationships. And I think the people that I've, you know, my friendships and the relationships that I have in my life have really come from that creative kind of bond, or creative, the making that we've done together or whatever. So it's, yeah, it really, yeah, pulls you together as well.
Yeah.
Creativity.
Yeah, I feel like the word that comes to mind for me when I think about what creativity is personally is literally just like nourishing. Like it's like, I mean, sometimes it is just eating like a really paying meal, but like it just feels like I've just eaten a really paying meal. Like it just, there's even, I guess with me, because I don't, like my creative practice personally is mostly just me like doing craft stuff in my house that I don't have like an artistic practice, but spending time with and kind of supporting and facilitating artists is so nourishing. It's like the most, it's so intimate. There's something so intimate about that kind of exchange of, I guess what you were saying, Hannah, like it's a knowledge form, like feeling is knowing, and that isn't really respected in a lot of places in society. But I think you're quite fortunate when you land in a space where feeling is as valued as like fact or something. So that kind of knowledge that you can exchange with people through like creative expression is just incredible.
Yeah, agreed.
We also wanted to ask you in terms of sort of the process of actually getting involved in creative projects, like what steps did you take and how did you manage to get involved with the projects that you've been involved with? Because, you know, you often hear so many kind of rumors when you're like, if people consider you a creative type, they're like, oh, like there's no money in that, or especially I suppose like studying at a Russell Group university where you see a lot of your peers going into kind of corporate internships and things, which is like hugely understandable, but also like it's just like very, very scary that I don't know, obviously like with the option of financial security versus as we said, kind of trying to follow your heart and be nourished, like it's hard to strike a balance. So how did you kind of take those steps and I suppose trust your feeling of how you want to live, I suppose?
Yeah, there was a long time, I guess it wasn't actually that long in the grand scheme of things, it felt really long at the time, but I was working 3 jobs when I graduated to just kind of obviously to have money to pay rent and like do stuff. So I think there was definitely an element of kind of like, I don't want to say graft because I'm not sure that's actually the word, but like of kind of biting the bullet with it a bit. But also like, I guess like practically what I did was I studied anthropology. It's not that much use to me anymore, but I studied anthropology at Cambridge. And then when I graduated, I'd done some summer work before. Obviously, I worked at the Heong, and I ran the Blake Society in my third year, which is kind of Downing's Arts and Humanities Society. So I'd kind of engaged quite a lot with it at uni and knew that I wanted to work in the arts, and knew that my strengths and kind of what I would get the most out of wasn't necessarily like making my own art, but facilitating and supporting and kind of being a bit of an infrastructure person. And I think, so when I was in second year, I did like a traineeship program at Bold Tendencies, which is in London, which was unpaid. So in order to do that, I had to apply for a bursary from the career service, which I was kind of fortunate enough to get, and was completely like vital. Otherwise I would have been, I mean, it was in South London and I lived in North London at the time, so I would have been spending hundreds of pounds on transport that I didn't have. So it was completely vital to do that. And then I guess when I left, I got another internship through those people, and then I did a lot of front of house work. I signed up to not a temp agency, like an agency basically, where they put me in different places. And the first job I got through that was at the Museum of London, which, no shade to Museum of London, is a cool museum, but was a horrible job. But it was really interesting. Kind of, that was my first big institutional front of house job. Until then, all of the front of house work I'd done was pretty like small scale. And then through the same agency, I ended up working at Welcome Collection, which was like so good. It was amazing. And that was my first kind of like, I guess my first real kind of latch onto, I won't say completely socially engaged, but like more socially aware curation and an insight into kind of, for me personally, a more exciting area of the arts, where those, like, I don't know how much everyone knows about Welcome Collection, but they're a health organisation. But Welcome Collection, which is obviously owned by Wellcome Trust, is a gallery space in London, which kind of explores all the different parts about health and bodies and society. So it's a really, really exciting place, and it's undergoing quite a lot of change at the minute. And when I was there was a real big, they'd already decided this was all happening, and they were kind of gathering everyone's feedback on it, but they're really updating their collection because I mean, basically Henry Wellcome, whose collection it is, wasn't the best guy, and so there's a lot of problems in it. There's a lot of human remains, and there's a lot of kind of things to get right and things that can go wrong. So it was a really interesting place to work. But yeah, basically I just did a lot of front of house work for a while, and then kind of forged a relationship with Shape Arts on the side, because I'd applied to one job that I didn't get, and then I did some volunteering. And because of my work at Welcome, where they're very, I think I might have lost the internet for a minute. Welcome is very into the social model of disability as well, and have a hugely accessible gallery space. So it was that really kind of, I guess, tied the knot for me in terms of knowing kind of more specifically where I wanted to be going. So yeah, then I started working at Shape in January, and have had a lot of fun since.
Yeah, I kind of similarly, I had a time after I finished my English, I did English literature, and I similarly ran the Blake Society when I was in my third year. And actually that was quite for me, similarly, quite important shaping. It kind of reinforced the idea that I wanted to make more, and I wanted to be in a position where I was either back at not necessarily at an institution, but I wanted to have the space to make. And then after I finished that, I think a lot of the I think meeting writers and meeting artists also helped, like just meeting people who it was their living, or if it was the way that they I don't know, they were very generous in who they wanted to connect you with, and kind of just through their generosity, actually, I I kind of, again, reinforced the fact that I wanted to make again. So I did a foundation before I went to Cambridge, and then I had a year where I was working, I was volunteering a bit. I was working in my local cinema. I was doing various things. I was also going to, my granny ran a Alexander Technique school, so I was training in the Alexander Technique, which is like a body work technique. It's really, really interesting, worth looking up. But I was doing that, and then I applied to do printmaking, because I kind of it was something that I'd done a little bit at foundation, and I really loved it, and I loved the process, and I loved the kind of the real technical skill that was required. So I just did like an evening class, and I loved it, and I kind of applied quite soon after that. So it was kind of launching into 2 years of something I didn't really know much about, and I learned a lot, and I kind of still feel like I need to learn. There's so much more to learn, but yeah, I feel like I'm still learning, lots. So I don't feel like I'm, in terms of like a career, I don't feel like I have a career yet. I think there's lots of things I'm still interested in. I don't yet know what I'm going to be making really, or working as. I'd like to teach in some capacity, so I know that that's something for the future, but I'm still kind of working my way there, basically.
How about you, Abs?
Oh no.
I think Abs.
I think it's going to keep happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had quite a different journey to both of you, I suppose, in that I was kind of discouraged from doing anything in the arts or like creative sector, just because I suppose, for my parents and my background, it was more about financial security and getting a proper job and all of those kinds of things. And so when I first applied to Downing, I applied for Chinese studies, and to my parents, that was like already too like far out there. And funnily enough, it was like one of the only BAs I'd seen that had like a film aspect, as it had the East Asia film module. But yeah, and actually the person who interviewed me, I think, is in this Zoom, which is quite weird. But after I got accepted, I started, before uni, I was doing internships in banking because, again, proper job. And my boss at the time had kind of encouraged me to switch courses to economics, so that I'd be a good banker. And I listened to him and switched courses, and I didn't like the course. So I ended up dropping out. And what followed was a very like meandering journey, basically back to what I actually wanted to do, which is art and making things. And yeah, I've done loads of stuff. After I dropped out, I ended up starting in a tech company at one point, and I mean, that was good fun, and that was all kind of based around helping young people from state schools like me, who didn't have access to kind of structured careers advice, and about applying to university. And after that, I ended up working in advertising as a copywriter, and I was like, okay, I'm a bit closer to what I want to do, but still didn't really enjoy that because it still felt very corporate, even though it was a creative job. And then randomly on Twitter, I saw a program that another museum was doing, London Transport Museum, it's called Young Freelancers, and they help young people literally take their first steps to become freelancers in heritage, in museums, but also just creative industries in general. So I did that, and again, just kept my eyes out for other stuff. I found another traineeship with Art on the Underground, who commissioned Art on the Underground in London, and got to work on a ceramics installation. And then I was hooked. Like that was it. I was just like doing everything and anything I could. And I started freelancing for myself and doing photography. I ended up like having photos shown at the Barbican, which was really cool, and loads of little things were kind of popping up, but literally just from me just like shoving my work in people's faces at any opportunity I got, and putting stuff out there on Instagram and things like that. And then a couple of years ago now, someone kind of encouraged me, or just they suggested I go back to uni to actually study what I wanted to do, and told me about this course at Wimbledon, which is fine art, but it's print and time-based media. And so yeah, here I am. This is my last year, and I suppose similar to what you're saying, Hannah. Like I'm still learning, and I'm like building up ideas of what I want to do. But I'm also fortunate to be freelancing at the same time, and so I feel like I have a career, which is good. Like that I'm making work and getting paid, which is really good. But also still meeting artists who inspire me and looking out for other opportunities just to like keep building up this idea of what my practice is and connecting to people and exploring. And yeah, that's it.
I think it's things like, I mean, I hate to say the word career path, but it always feels like a lot of things that aren't a set career path. It's kind of veiled in secrecy about how you might go about doing what you want to do and like making money to survive doing what you want to do. And it seems like it's often not really talked about. So thank you for like being very generous and sharing your experiences, because I think it's very useful either for people to see what they can do in the future, or solidarity for people also like struggling through, especially right now, I think, with lockdown and COVID. And I think it's difficult to find opportunities now, probably. Yeah, so I guess kind of following on from bits of what you, Ellie and Hannah mentioned, bringing it back to Cambridge. I think it's interesting that you both mentioned the Blake Society, and I want to ask more about whether you can see the roots of like your creative practice or career in like connected to your time in Cambridge. I'm thinking about what was really generative for you in Cambridge, and also perhaps what was less generative, or what was like a barrier, I guess, to making work. And the same like for you, Abs, as well. Like what were you engaged in? Like, did you know at that time that you wanted to follow creative stuff and you just couldn't really find something in Cambridge? Or was there something in Cambridge that also made you think, oh, that's actually what I want to do instead? Things like that.
I think Hannah's kind of already touched on it, but I think the Blake Society and also the Heong and Perona like were the trifecta of support for me in that regard. Like I kind of, the only thing I knew, I think, when I got to uni is that I really wanted to do something socially engaged, because like getting to Cambridge and going to Cambridge was already kind of a bit of a like scrabble for my brain anyway. So like I was like, I want to engage with this kind of, I guess, anger that I have that is just there. And then it was only because I didn't apply to Downing. I actually applied, I can't remember where I actually applied, but I got pulled to Downing. And the year I was a fresher was the year that they had the Ai Weiwei trees up outside the chapel. And I was like, God, this is crazy. Like, this is so cool. And then I like obviously found the gallery, and all of it was completely new to me and nothing I was expecting. And so I think there was definitely the seeds of that. I think once I started working in the Heong as well, like I got a better appreciation for something that I think before, had I not been at Downing and had we not had the gallery and had I not had support through the Blake Society, I think I would have felt more that those kind of opportunities around Cambridge were reserved for people that knew about art and people that had an art education and like people that knew history of art. And obviously I know nothing. I've never had a formal art education. I couldn't name very many kind of like famous historical painters or anything. Like that's not where I'm at. I'm much more at the kind of here and now creativity. And so I think also because for me, history of art, like regardless of whether it is or not, feels very kind of like inaccessible as a discipline. And so I was kind of a bit like wary of it. But I think working at the Heong and doing the Blake Society kind of opened up paths to me that were nothing to do with the history of art and nothing really to do with like art, like big A art. It was more about community and creativity and what those opportunities afforded, and like having events with the Blake Society where we could just like get students together to do something like make a poster. I was like, that's just fun. Like everybody likes making a poster. Everybody wants to have a poster on their wall that they made because it feels nice. It's a nice feeling, and it feels even nicer when you've sat and you've done it with other people. And so like I was just really fortunate, I guess, that we had that. I think that the college were supportive of the Blake Society. I think I was allowed to kind of be a bit of an adult about it. You know, I had important meetings and spoke as if it was like my business. And so I did feel like I was supported to that respect. I think in terms of like barriers to being able to do all of that at Cambridge, for me, came so much less from the creativity, the art side of Cambridge, and so much more from everything else about Cambridge, like the day-to-day existence of Cambridge, being surveilled 24/7, being harassed for money 24/7, not giving the support I needed, not, you know, like all of that. My day-to-day existence as a student in Cambridge was, you know, the hard bit. The creativity, which I felt was kind of nurtured and I was afforded those spaces, was the saving grace for me.
Yeah, it shouldn't be so. I mean, it shouldn't be so separate, should it? This is the thing. Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps you want to say anything now, but I don't know.
You can go.
We ended up going in like a
little triangle.
Yeah, a triangle. Yeah, I think. Sorry, what were you saying?
I'll just say it's the order we introduced you.
Oh yeah, there you go. We just follow it. I think, yeah, I reckon I had quite a strong inclination in me that I already knew. I really wanted to make, but I wouldn't have known exactly what it was that I wanted to make. And I was involved a bit in theatre, but I was never really. It becomes a lot of people who I think do theatre at Cambridge. It does become quite all encompassing, or it becomes your kind of creative outlet. And it wasn't really for me, but it was definitely how I met some great people. The Kettle's Yard I loved a lot, and it basically it was closed for half of my degree, but at the same time, right when it closed for refurb and everything, or the house, it was all being done up, the Heong Gallery opened, and I think that it was so exciting. I just remember it was quite a surprise because basically it just kind of arrived, and it kind of almost came from nowhere. I didn't know about it before I applied or anything, so it was all suddenly there. And Stephen Bennett, who worked a lot with the theatre at Downing, he was really encouraging, and so was Perona and Rachel, who was the curator, who's at the beginning of the Heong Gallery. They were all really supportive. I think it was a kind of mixture of it was still college related, but it kind of felt separate in a way, in that it felt like, it was engaged with people who were coming from outside of college. And it's kind of shocking how many people who are at the university don't really experience much. They won't necessarily, I mean, myself included, I hardly ever went to the Fitzwilliam Museum. I probably went like a few times, and I lived really near. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have known or gone to the Heong Gallery. So it was real luck in a sense that Downing was the college that I was at, and that like the Heong Gallery was a big presence in helping me feel like there were other possibilities, and it didn't have to be like solely focused on degree work and like the academic life of things. So yeah, I think there's a way to go in terms of like engaging, like getting students engaged in the whole plethora of like activities that are available in the whole of Cambridge. But the people who I met also who lived in Cambridge and not necessarily studied there, they also opened me up to like other possibilities. And I think it's just having having life that's not contained within the university there and like visible whilst you're studying. It just makes a huge difference. And I think it's difficult, but it's possible, definitely. Abs, what about you? I mean,
I think for me, like the gallery was really great because it wasn't the first time I went to Cambridge after I dropped out and then came back again. It was there, and like working as a gallery supervisor was really cool. Like I remember that the first exhibition there was the generation painting one, and I still got the tote bag at home. Like it was, I don't know, it was nice to be in a space that where I could just like switch off and not be thinking about the essays I needed to write or whatever it was. And I remember everyone that kind of came in would always talk about the big window in the gallery space, because it frames a college really beautifully. And yeah, I just remember like just standing there daydreaming. But I kind of agree with what you guys are saying in terms of college life and academic life at Cambridge is just a lot. And I was struggling with my mental health and with like keeping up with the workload. And yeah, it just didn't really allow for me to get engaged in the things that I wanted to get engaged with. And as I've kind of said already, like I felt this pressure to be applying for internships, and you know, as part of like the whatever we called the Investment Society and the Marshall Society and all these societies which like look great to banks, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I think in terms of like exploring things beyond my subject that were creative, I found loads of random stuff. So like there was a point when I can't remember, there's like a research centre that started to have a filmmaker in residency a few years ago in Cambridge. And I think it was Joanna
Hogg.
Yes.
Yeah, I went
that
to
was
that.
Amazing. That was so good.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
so
it's
happy
really
when it
good.
started. And like there were students like from loads of different courses, and just like meeting the other students who went to that and getting to chat to them afterwards about stuff we wanted to work on or work together on was really, really helpful for me. And also another lecturer, Malachi McIntosh, who was in the English department, he started doing a series of talks about Caribbean literature that he opened up beyond the English department, and I just happened to hear about, and I went along to those, and again, that was amazing. Like I'm Caribbean, that's my heritage, and I'd never looked at it from that perspective, and that gave me loads of ideas. But finding these things, if they're not part of your department, of your course, is such a struggle, especially when you think about like, all the colleges just feel like separate islands. Do you know what I mean? So if I had friends who were at St. John's, so they told me about St. John's Picture House, but I wouldn't have known about it if I didn't know those guys. So that is quite a hard thing to deal with when you're in a college system and when you're just trying to keep up academically as well each term.
Yeah,
and even when sorry.
No, you go.
I was just gonna
you go.
You go.
Okay, I was gonna say that it's like interesting as well, because the more kind of science courses, obviously I have no experience of that, but for my friends that were on the science courses, like they probably had absolutely no time to do any of this anyway. Like I had the time to sit in my room and think about my books and essays, and while I was thinking, like play around on stuff. I think another thing that I've just remembered that also was quite formative to this was that I worked for Varsity, the newspaper, for a few years, which I was kind of into because I really, really enjoyed the design of it. And I was fashion editor for a bit, which is a bit random, but I really we got to do photo shoots and like play around with Adobe and all of this stuff that I wouldn't have been able to get access to. And so I could just kind of sit in my room and play around on Photoshop and Adobe, and like I made a zine at one point, and I had not loads of time, but I had time to do that with. And I think that probably wasn't the case for a lot of people, either because they were on a completely like different course with a much heavier workload, or just because people work completely differently, and there's not a lot of scope in Cambridge life for you to be different and to function differently. So if you aren't the sort of person that had that time, then I don't know when you would have done any of that.
Yeah. And even with creative, it hops on what you were saying as well. Like even with the courses so like English literature, where I think there's the scope of there's more of a scope of creativity in the sense of, or what comes to mind when you think of creativity in terms of like writing and creative writing and things like that. But even with the English literature course, I think you can find a way of shaping it the way you want it, but it's a lot of work to do that. And with I think back on my dissertations, they're quite it makes sense that I did what I did, because it's quite similar to what I think, like the way I'm thinking and the way I'm processing things now, like thinking about the scraps of Emily Dickinson's poetry, or like actually W.S. Graham was the poet I did my second dissertation on, and I found him through the Heong Gallery, like through the artists that were in that first exhibition, the Generation Painting. He was a poet, he knew a lot of those painters, so like I managed to make it part of my degree. But really the modules that I loved and that kind of really have shaped me the most, the ones I did in my third year, the visual culture paper and the post-colonial and related literature paper. And it's just it's kind of frustrating that they came so late in a way, but and how like in terms of like creative scope and the impact of it, even when it's in a kind of creative course like English literature, it can sometimes take so long in a way to get to the point where you're really studying the texts that really get you excited and make you want to write your own things. Or people who did contemporary literature in that final year as well, I think they had a kind of similar breakthroughs. And I guess at least you do get those breakthroughs, potential breakthroughs. But yeah, I don't know, it's definitely shaped me, like the literature course, in ways that I wasn't fully conscious straight after I came out of Cambridge. I think it's kind of taken me quite a while to work out how the literature and how the words and the writing all kind of seep in now. But yeah, that's what I would say about like Cambridge and shaping and
we are coming up to 6, but I think if people are happy to stay around, we can do maybe a last few questions. And also, please, any members of the audience, if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and then either me or Maria will ask it as well. So, but if Maria, you want to ask a question while people are typing, maybe, and then
if you're watching on YouTube, unfortunately, we can't.
Yeah.
Want to join the Zoom or something. Yeah, I guess my final question would be what if you could like talk to your younger self who was like studying at Cambridge, what advice would you say to your younger self, or like what advice would you give, I suppose, like students who know that they want to do something creative? And
reverse the triangle.
Yeah, I can start. I suppose advice I'd give to my younger self would be to stick to Chinese studies first of all, and not choose a degree over like for a specific job. But advice more generally to young people, like people at uni at the moment, I think there's a real like opportunity in terms of Cambridge does have a lot of societies, and like you were mentioning the career service bursary, like there are often like these pockets of money, whether that's for individuals like the career service bursary or from colleges to societies that you can use to your advantage, whether that's like to fund an unpaid internship or to travel or to like literally anything. And in return, like you have to write a report, I think it is like once you've done it, literally just apply for all of those things. And I feel like with any career, there's no set route into like finding yourself or like finding what you ultimately want to do. But even more in the arts, there is no set path to anything. But what is kind of guaranteed is that the more you get out there, the more people you meet, is like more opportunity for ideas to spark up in your head, and for you to find people to collaborate with, people to just bounce ideas off. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, that's very good advice. I would add to that. I think taking care of yourself and having and I guess in terms of nourishing, like what Ellie was saying earlier, I think you're right that creativity when you're studying in such a pressurized environment, but it's a lot of, it can be a lot of self-pressure, a lot of expectation on yourself. So I think I'd probably give myself, I would ask myself to make sure that I took care of myself, because I think there were times when I didn't, and it was just, I could be miserable, and that was, and although I thought I was looking after myself, I probably I wasn't putting my mental health first. So I think that's the advice. It's not, I'm sure within that there's a lot of it's also about other people around you, and there being and maybe this is happening in Cambridge, that there's more of more attention and more care on mental health. I'd say that I'd hope that there is. I don't know whether people can say that's true. I hope that is, and especially in like the current circumstances when it can be so isolating. You just hope that that's possible, I guess.
Yeah, I guess my advice would be kind of 2 points. One, reiterating what Abs was saying, like I don't think it's a completely universal advice, because not everybody will be able to do this for many different reasons, but if you can game the system, and if you kind of like put your fingers in as many pies as you can, and as you feel like you can manage, and you seek out those pots of money, and you seek out the people with the authority to make those decisions, and I guess like you were saying, Abs, that you just shove your stuff in their face, like shove your ideas in their face, and like kind of just force it to work. Obviously that's not particularly good advice, and it isn't applicable to everybody, but the more you can just be quite like rabid with it, the more success you will have, just because if you're throwing law of probability, something's got to work eventually. And then I guess my other kind of advice would primarily be, because I think so much of it comes down to confidence, and I think that the more confident you are that what you're doing is worthwhile and that your ideas are meaningful, the more you'll feel kind of empowered to make the connections with people that you need to make in order to kind of build a network, I guess, and like find those opportunities. But I think that confidence ultimately comes from community, and I think that can take lots of different forms. So I think the most important thing you can do for yourself as a Cambridge student is find your community, and find whatever that looks like. It could be 2 people, it could be you and a porter, it could be anything. But if you find a community in which you feel safe and you feel nourished, then you're going to be more confident, and when you're more confident, you do have greater success. And that doesn't really seem fair, because confidence is a loaded term, and confidence looks different for everybody. But I think that there is a level of like inner confidence that can be really, really beneficial to you, especially in a creative environment, just because it unfortunately is quite a social environment too, and the line between work and social life is a bit blurred. So I think finding that kind of sense of self and sense of safety gives you a bit more confidence to do well. So I think that's probably the advice I'd give my younger self.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's just really like amazing to like. I hope we can build a community. Like, I hope this is also the beginning of building a community for people in Cambridge and also outside of Cambridge as well, and like a space for conversation and things. But yes, we've had 2 questions in the chat, so if everyone's happy to stay, because I know we've said 6, but if everyone's like could stay, then we can just ask them now. But Prona has said, would you like to mentor current students who might be looking at some of the pathways you have taken?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Do whatever I can. Give any advice, wisdom, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, yeah.
I guess it goes back to what we were all just saying. Like, I guess the idea of being a mentor seems a bit silly to me, because I only left college like last year. But I think what that question harks to is what we were saying about community and networks and opportunities for collaboration. And so like I think it would be mutually beneficial for me to be in contact with people with similar experiences to me who want to do similar things to me, because that's going to enrich my life as well as their life. So I think that would definitely be, I would enjoy that.
Yeah,
I think like the the mutuality of it. Like, it's not just a mentor, like you can, both people can benefit, or like more than two people in that relationship can benefit from that. Yeah, which is really nice, like a really good way of looking at it. Yeah. And then there's a question from Alan, who says, thank you for your thoughts. What more do you think Downing could do to stimulate and support creativity amongst its students?
I probably had this chat with you before, Alan. I think, yeah, I guess what I was saying earlier, for me, I actually do think that Downing was probably better than some other colleges in kind of creating an environment for the arts to exist. I think that's predominantly down to the fact that we had the gallery. We had art around college that wasn't the same as art at other colleges. And we had Perona, and I guess things like even like all of the English students being taught in Downing, like everyone I know that did English was taught in Downing by like a solid English department. And so there was a very kind of like in-house vibe to the creativity. But I think that what Downing can do to kind of make that more worthwhile and more meaningful is just improve the other aspects of people's lives in Cambridge, and make sure that things are signposted, that those pots of money are visible to students, and they don't really, like, although we've said like you should search out the pots of money, you should, they shouldn't have to be so hidden, they shouldn't have to be so hard to find, you shouldn't have to put in so much labor to just kind of doing that. So I think that, yeah, it's about making everything smoother. It would be my feedback.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I remember at one point during exam term, maybe we had like these well-being or like, mental health well-being talks. And people kind of grumbled, they didn't really want to go to the first one. And then the second one that happened was like, I think we all sat in a room upstairs somewhere, and we ended up doing like meditation and like just relaxing. And that was really nice. One, because we were all stressed out and just like panicking about our lives, but it was just nice to kind of be given space just to do something that wasn't about our exams or about revising. And I think that kind of encouraging more things like that, whether that's a separate event or just like, as you said, signposting students to things around Cambridge in general, not just in Downing, that would be really helpful.
Having those kinds of things available throughout the year, and I think there were things like that available, like mindfulness classes, I think. But having, I guess, one thing that I was thinking about, like key moments like at Downing, and I think I ran a drawing workshop in my first or second year, and that was so exciting for me because it was a really playful session. And I remember some people came who I didn't know, and people who wouldn't think of them, people really tend to start drawing, and it was a really like hopefully like opening workshop where it was just like you weren't looking at the page, you were just drawing and drawing the person sitting across from you. And I think if those kinds of workshops have been going on, and it takes a lot of work, so it's kind of it's so nourishing, I guess. Having and knowing that there's a kind of consistent that they're happening in a consistent way is really important. So it's knowing that there are these like communities within the college or these places which will have this thing maybe every week or every other week, so that communities can build and grow and people can support each other and share things. I think also it's about like you were saying about confidence, and showing things to people. It's like you have to be in a space where you can share and not be feeling like you're going to be judged or whatever. So it takes, I think it just takes work and support, but also consistency, I reckon. And
I guess when you go to a college as opposed to like a university, I mean obviously to a lesser degree with a university as well, but you are kind of like forced into a community, and that sounds quite negative, and I don't think it always is negative, and it shouldn't be negative, but I think it can be. And I think that when you're kind of told time and time again that you are part of this community and you're dependent on this community. And there's quite a contradiction in Cambridge, because Cambridge wants to be at once like quite paternalistic to students, but also we're all supposed to be kind of adults doing it on ourselves. And I think there's a lot of tension that arises around that idea of kind of misalignment between students who don't feel quite at home or who feel a bit different, because Cambridge has kind of one idea of what works, and if you can't do that, you might be a bit of a problem, and we're going to have to sort you out. And I think that that's something that I encountered quite a lot in Downing, not creatively, you know, just in my day-to-day. Like, I don't think that I as a person lent myself very well to that kind of structure and environment, and I like my independence, and yet, you know, we've got cleaners every day, and we've got this and we've got that. And I think that what we were going on about before about community and confidence, like if you're going to put people in a community, then you have a responsibility to them, and that community should be lifting people up, and it should feel good. It should feel good to be part of a community. It shouldn't feel shameful, and it shouldn't feel uncomfortable. And I think that that's probably why there feels like a bit of a lack of creativity in Cambridge, because like nobody's quite confident enough to put themselves out there and to share with others, like you were saying, Hannah. Like, well, I mean, obviously there are some people who are, but like I think for a lot of students in Cambridge, like you do just feel a little bit like you're questioning yourself all the time, because you're not quite sure what is going on, because it's completely contradictory. So I think making it feel like you are safe and making you feel more comfortable in yourself will lend itself so much better to the kind of the like really enriching creative spaces that Downing does have and that other colleges can have.
Really wonderful and important note on which to wrap up this amazing discussion. And yeah, I was, when you were talking about that drawing workshop you did, Hannah, I was thinking about with the last exhibition which Perona curated, we did a really fun activity where people drew on ceramic plates with like these funny pens that you then had to bake the plates to preserve the image. And we've never had so many people show up. They were queuing out the door. I had to like go to a charity shop to try and get more plates. And
Brilliant.
so nice to but yeah, those moments when and from working in the Heong, when you just get people coming in and saying that they've never been there before, or you just have quite random chats about the art and their life. These are for me like really special moments of community in Cambridge, as we were saying. Yeah, I don't know if, Evelyn, have you got any final
no, just if anyone has anything like final to add, then, or anyone has like a last minute final urgent question, put it in the chat. Yeah, but I don't know, I don't really have anything else to say besides thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you for being so generous and
open.
I hope that we can continue, and also like that Gloria can also become it is partly, but also become more of a space to do these kind of things that we've talked about, and that we can carry on having these kind of conversations and community, because I think that's also what, in my experience in Cambridge, there's not a lot of spaces to have these reflective conversations as well, because time moves so fast, and it's sometimes good to think what could you do differently than what you're than like the rut that you're stuck in, I guess.
I think if you facilitate these things, then people will come, people will be there. So it's just keep it going. It's great. Thank you so much for having us involved. It's great. Really nice to talk.
Yeah, and thanks Perona for helping us organise. In January, our next event that we currently know of is in January. We're going to have the poet Suhaima Manzoor Khan doing a poetry reading, which should be really exciting. And she also studied at Cambridge. yeah, I would recommend her poetry collection, Post-Colonial Banter, for anyone looking for a new read. But this has been wonderful. We will see if everyone's comfortable. I think we might put this on YouTube, but only if we'll be in touch. But either way, looking forward to building more on this discussion, and have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. See you guys.